Okay, there we go. Awesome. Okay, so welcome everybody to another cute session. Champions using teams effectively. Your hosts Ricardo Wilkins and Stacy Mildenberger are here today to geek up and chat about teams. We have the new format where we're using a regular Teams meeting, so you, our guests, are live and can talk directly to us. We have disabled your videos though. But yeah, we're here to come to talk about anything you want to talk about. As we mentioned kind of off the recording, we're certainly ready to talk about Whiteboard, which is new to the government customers. If you're coming here from commercial, you're used to it, but our government commercials are just now getting the integration in the Teams. But definitely, if you have other questions you came here to talk about, put them in the chat. We'll hit those up too. But we always just try to come prepared to talk about some kind of topic. So that's what we thought people might want to hear about today. Um, so yeah, let me get my screen sharing going, and we will talk about Whiteboard. Let's see here. Here, okay. All right. So it has been introduced probably, I guess, maybe this week is probably, I'd say, the official, rolling out or finishing of the rollout. Um, if you're out there and Whiteboard maybe isn't working for you, one suggestion I'd have is just do the check for updates, sign out, sign in, just to make sure you got the latest version and all that good stuff. But if you do, you will see Whiteboard in your Teams meetings and in the web. What you won't see that you might expect to see is the native Whiteboard app that from the Windows Store. That's still not enabled for government customers just yet. Again, if you're in commercial in here, you've got all Whiteboard capabilities. So we're really talking about this more from the government customer perspective today. Let me pull up we recently did a blog post about this that's got info.
Ricardo, I just pasted that in the chat for folks.
Very good.
I definitely wanted this audience for sure to see that the blog post that you wrote along with Teams PM really goes through all that anyone should expect from the government cloud Whiteboard landing with a couple of important notes in there that I'm sure we'll address in this half hour, but just wanted to give you that reference. So I threw that in there.
Absolutely. Great. So yeah, so that will take you to a bunch of stuff that kind of talks through, what we'll really show today. If you're an IT admin, some things about, with PowerShell, and then some things to keep in mind as well. And the big ones, again, for this initial rollout to the government community cloud, this is still limited to your org only and guests in your org. Doesn't include the native Whiteboard app. And if you're a Surface Hub user, this still is not the full sign in, version of Whiteboard on your Surface Hub. It's still the local only mode. But if you are in a government tenant today and you are in a meeting, which we will fire one up here. Where you will see Whiteboard is as something that can be shared in the share tray. So we have our share button here, and we now have the Whiteboard button here. So clicking that would present this to all the attendees in the meeting. And this is your typical Whiteboard. And for the most part, this looks the same as commercial. I believe commercial actually is getting some updates. Maybe Whiteboard in general is getting some updates that I think we recently announced. But I think for right now, this should be the same or comparable to commercial. So quick primer, if there's someone out there that's like, what's the big deal with a Whiteboard, or what does this thing do, right? So being in a meeting and being able to do what you might typically do on a actual whiteboard, right? Things like tables and doing notes and so forth. That's not greatest notes ever, but Moving things around, you can see. People do love it for its sticky notes capability.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Moving this thing around. Let's see. And but of course and this is really an endlessly large page. You can see I'm zooming in and out. I could be moving these things all over the place. But of course it is collaborative as well. So the other people in the meeting, assuming they're in your org, can be in this whiteboard as well. They could be putting their own edits. So it's not just the organizer of the meeting doing this whiteboard for everyone to view. We're all in it. We're all making our own sticky notes. We're all typing in, and all those kind of things. I do think this is a little fancier, especially if you're on a Surface Hub. I think you get a little more fancy goodness than what we're seeing here. But we're certainly, the hub is, I mean, the whiteboard is certainly still here. Okay. What I'll also point out, so this is in the meeting experience. If I were to go, as we all know, those meetings are also represented in our chat area. So you can see that there is a whiteboard there as well. So I could access it, let's say during the meeting, but let's say this meeting was over. The nice thing is that that tab is still there. So in my chat area, me and the rest of the attendees could continue to collaborate on this whiteboard if needed, right? So I could certainly do this and put some more users in to really prove that it's collaborative, but I suspect you believe me that everyone would be able to access and collaborate on this thing, again, even outside of the meeting. What is the other place where this is, so this introduction of Whiteboard to GCC is also introducing the fact that this whiteboard is stored in OneDrive as opposed to the whiteboard service per se. So given that I created that one, I should, if I'm coming over to the browser and to my whiteboard, or actually coming over to my OneDrive in the browser, just to prove this point. See, this is my normal OneDrive files. You see, I have a whiteboards folder that I didn't create myself, was created for me once I started using whiteboards. And it is where all the whiteboards that I would be creating are stored. You can see a few seconds ago, this one popped in there. If I open that, I'm still in the browser. It's taking me to the browser version of Whiteboard. And so this is the other thing that's really launched. So yes, whiteboards in meeting, but really whiteboards in the web. You can see I've got a home button, and essentially whiteboard.office.com is where my whiteboards can be seen and accessed in the web, and even creating a new one. So I'm making a new whiteboard outside of a meeting that I could then proceed to start sharing with people. You can see the share link here. What isn't there yet is, I mean, you would think, you expect that to be an icon among your other apps. That's not there yet. I was wondering if they had put it there under the scenes for me and make me a liar, but so that's not there yet. So whiteboard.office.com for now. You need to remember that URL to hit the home page of Whiteboard in the web, or just continue to use your OneDrive area to jump into that if you didn't remember the URL. That at a high level is the gist of what's being launched here. Collaborative whiteboards in a Teams meeting or related to a Teams meeting, as well as the use of OneDrive as a storage, which then of course gives you ability to use it to some degree outside of the meeting as well. Again, the native app not there yet. I'm trying to think if there was another key point here I am missing. Yep, so we have it there. We don't yet have it if you're trying to come over to your team and in the channel and looking for it. Not there yet, but it is in the meetings area as a tab.
So Jim has asked, is there something that needs to be done to get that whiteboard folder created in OneDrive? And I don't believe so, as long as Whiteboard is enabled.
Right. If it's enabled and from what I observed, that first use of it, magically the whiteboards folder is created and they start getting stored here. It's the same experience actually if you ever noticed with these folders. I didn't create these
Right.
folders either, but the first time I shared something in a chat or whatnot, it got created for me. So I think it's using that same approach. So these three folders here were not created by me. I'd hate to think what happens if I delete them or rename them. They're probably super special. But yeah, they got created for me. I didn't have to create that myself.
Right. And I think it's interesting. I hope that it's clear, and I think it is, but I'm sensing some confusion in the fact that we've released Whiteboard on the web and Whiteboard in Teams meetings at the same time. They really are, it's Whiteboards accessible from both places. You don't always and only have access to Whiteboard in Teams meetings, right? You are able to go to that whiteboard.office.com outside of a meeting context and have the full experience of Whiteboard for the web from anywhere, whether you're running it in a meeting or not. So yeah, Jim, I would say hit that URL outside of a meeting context and create a little test whiteboard, and I bet you will have that folder in OneDrive right after that, because that's where it's going to default to storing it. He says doing it now. So I'm sure he'll reply and let us know how it goes. He does ask if it will authenticate to your enterprise account. And if you're prompted to log in, absolutely use your enterprise account. But I would imagine that office.com is going to recognize those credentials if you're using a browser you've used with other of our services.
Mm. So certainly for those that have been waiting on whiteboard capability, and if you've attended this session or seen anything I put out, I've certainly been talking about alternatives like OneNote and the third-party apps that do whiteboarding. But for many, they've been waiting for a native first-party whiteboard experience. This is it finally here. Maybe not in its full form just yet, but a big start. People, at least customers I've talked to, were waiting for it specifically for meetings.
Right.
So I think it makes sense that it started here versus maybe the app or something like that. So this is great. I always do bring out the caveat. If you're collaborating in a meeting with this, think about how you want to uh, share this later or store this later. I mean, it is great, this whiteboard and all the work. I mean, imagine a bunch of work that all the meeting attendees do to fill this thing out, whatever it may be, is now associated with this meeting. When I come back to it or when I pin it, I can always come back to this whiteboard and see all that great content. If I want to take that greatness and share it or archive it in some other kind of way, we certainly have that ability, as I'll show here. But is it, is it the way you kind of want? So I can export the entirety of the whiteboard as an image, essentially, which I think would be fine. In fact, let's do it and just see what that looks like. So put it in my downloads folder. So I just opened it up in photos. So, I mean, pretty good fidelity. But what I would imagine is if this got full, I don't know, it probably would still look good. But when you want to share this, imagine this real detailed whiteboard, just remember that you'll be sharing it as an image. I guess you could put it in a Word doc or turn it into a PDF, but just keep that in mind that it really is an image, which is probably the same as what you were doing in a real room when you took a picture of that whiteboard. If anybody remembers those big
Yep.
white squares on the wall that we used to write on. But yeah, we would take a picture of that and send that around. So essentially the same thing. So but yeah, just keep that in mind. So, this is a little different. I would imagine meeting notes kind of info would get in here, but we're going to be sharing it maybe a little different than we would typically share our meeting notes that would have been in Word or in chat or something like that.
We've got another quick question, and I think I know the answer, but I'm wondering if maybe we could test something for Jim. So Jim says that he's curious if he is going to be able to pull in a whiteboard that he created in his personal Windows 10 account and do something with it here in the GCC whiteboard. And I think the answer is yes, because it's going to come in as a whiteboard file, which once it's in this folder in
I would,
OneDrive.
yeah, I would guess no,
Okay.
because it's a separate, that consumer one is a separate service.
Oh.
I feel like there might be a different architecture going on here. In the consumer one, I don't even know, is there an export to some kind of whiteboard specific file? I don't know that I've ever seen that.
That's a
So,
good question. Maybe Jim can tell us if he gives it a shot from his personal Windows 10 account,
yeah,
if he can share it to his enterprise account.
but I would kind of guess no, and then
But
especially,
given what you just said about export as a PNG, if he could get it out of his commercial whiteboard as an image, then couldn't he bring it, just add
yeah,
it as an image here
yeah,
and
you
then
could certainly,
continue whiteboarding on top of it or around it?
right,
I think
yeah,
that would work.
yeah. In fact, let me try that. If I did a little snippet here, right, into my little snip and sketch thing, and then came over to my whiteboard. Well, I don't think I can pay. That may be a limitation of being in the browser, because I certainly can't paste what I had
Mm,
there in my clipboard. And I actually don't see add image thing here. So yeah,
that's interesting. Maybe we
yeah,
can do some additional testing
right.
um, for that, because I know on the hub, I think you can drop an image on, but
Yeah,
that's using the desktop app, right, for Whiteboard.
right. Yep. So yeah, the web version, or maybe this initial rollout does certainly have some caveats.
Well, but I'm up for the challenge. Jim, we can tinker with that together and see what we can come up with. I think there's probably something we could do, or at least I can identify when that functionality may be available to bring an image into the browser version of Whiteboard. That should help us. Oh, good. He says from his personal Windows 10 that there are export options for PNG. So we can get it out. Now we just have to figure out how we can navigate getting it in.
Right. Yep. Certainly, yeah, definitely a great step forward in collaboration in the Teams meeting there.
Yeah, I agree. And the fact that it's available pre-meeting, during meeting, post-meeting, I think continues to drive our story about just how powerful Teams meetings can be, especially if it is on, a topic where folks are trying to accomplish things before or get some sort of consensus before arriving into the room or arriving into the Teams meeting together. It gives you that additional piece to work on and share.
Absolutely.
Oh, we've got a couple of hands up.
Yeah, go for it. Who is that?
Melody.
Yep.
Thank you. So I got interrupted for a little while ago. So I don't know if, Stacy, if you brought up the glitch that I was noticing that I sent you a chat on. So I'm just curious if it's happening to anybody else who is in a government tenant.
Okay, I'm wondering, did you have any success with the notes that I sent over for maybe good troubleshooting, perhaps the checking for updates one.
And yeah, I actually, when I saw your announcement to me yesterday, I actually did all of those things.
Okay, good.
I logged out, I quit, I logged out of my county cell phone Teams account. I have found also in the past that it's helpful to log out of my office.com. So all my office stuff that I'm logged into, sometimes I've noticed it may be kind of hold up an update that I know that I should be seeing. So that's one of the things that I did do. I restarted my machine. Like I said, I logged out plus quit Teams because I think quitting is the proper way to do it, not just logging out.
Right, right. I'm putting those troubleshooting notes and keynotes list. There's 6 items that may assist if you run into any oddities in interacting with Whiteboard now that it's landed. The number 1 item, and it's one that Melody has tried to deploy. We'll go over your particular use or scenario in just a second, but if you're having trouble sharing or participating in a whiteboard in a Teams meeting, or you're seeing or having difficulty seeing what someone is sharing to you from your organization in Whiteboard, a good rule of thumb is to check for updates, quit Teams, and then restart that Teams client. That should help make sure that you have the full and latest update of what's been pushed out from Teams engineering. Now, for your particular scenario, there was a difference between appointments made before the whiteboard rollout and appointments made after the whiteboard rollout, right? You were having difficulty with accessing the tab in the pre-meeting scenario for those meetings that were generated before, right,
Correct.
Melody?
Yeah, so the tab populated, but it just keeps clocking, and then I eventually get an error message that says it's not been enabled and I should contact my Teams administrator. So I tried it with a few different meetings and I had other people try it as well. And then at that point, I was like, oh, well, maybe we need to enable it, but I know it's supposed to be enabled automatically. But anyway, so
Right.
then I started some new meetings and it was there. So I could do it from share, or I could do it from what I call my main Teams instance. So my main screen, not my meeting screen. So where you open your chats from your chat history, like you're supposed to. So
Okay.
New meetings as of yesterday, it was working.
Okay. Well, I'll be happy to send over, and it's actually in the blog post too, for how to verify in SharePoint PowerShell that the whiteboard is enabled. If you find that, oh, thank you for sharing that screen, Ricardo. If you find that something there is set to false, then you would definitely be having issues. So we can clear that by ensuring and validating that that's set to true. If that's the case, the expected behavior is that those older meetings would be able to have an access whiteboard as well. It is unexpected behavior that your prior scheduled meetings don't have it. I tested it in my own demo tenant after you pinged me this morning. So I would say if we have confirmed that this SPO tenant commandlet PowerShell script does reflect true there for your environment, then we need to create a ticket.
Okay.
Especially if it's not just happening to you. If others are having that same behavior, it's likely something that we'll need to get someone to look at from the back end.
Okay. I'll get with our admin team and see if they can check.
Yeah, let's just make sure it's set to true, set to enabled, and then we'll go from there.
Set to true or set to false?
Well, if it's set to false, then it's disabled, and of course you guys can enable it. Wait an hour, try again. If
Okay.
it's set to true, then you're not having the experience we would want you to have. And so we would open a ticket at that point.
Okay. And is this part of that document that you sent the link to?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's all right there.
Okay.
Awesome.
Ricardo, we on the same page? Did I miss anything in that quick discussion? I know you didn't really get the full scenario that we
sounded
were
right to
talking
me. I mean,
about.
I think with any new service, if there's a, let's just call it a glitch. I mean, there's certainly room when a service is first rolled out where customers may need to submit a ticket if something isn't quite right. So
Right.
I don't get super surprised in that in week one of a new rollout to hear some glitches here and there. Coming up on time here. Any other questions for this week? Anybody has? I see a hand there from Christiana.
Good morning.
Mm.
Was wondering if Whiteboard will be available in breakout rooms.
Yes, I think we did add that to the thing here. So yes, they'll be in the should be in breakout rooms as well.
Woohoo.
Yeah. I need to fix this table apparently.
Oh,
At least the formatting, the data should be right. So yeah, good question.
we had a question in the chat about naming the whiteboards. And I noticed in your file when you did the quick one off of the meeting that you created, that it named it with that meeting title automatically. I think, if I noticed correctly.
It did, and I have certainly well, I did in some case rename a file, so it does give you a rename option. What I didn't test is whether or not that screwed something up somewhere else. So it is letting me do it. I just don't know, what is that experience? The other people in the meeting, did they get the rename? Is it just for me here? That kind of thing. But it did allow it. Um, so the short answer is yes, but what is the impact of the rename? I didn't test that thoroughly. So do it at your own risk, I guess.
Yeah, or like I'm sure you and I will do after this. Let's go test it, see
Yeah.
what happens. But the fact that it allows the rename and does not throw us a, are you sure you want to do that? Like we get when we try to rename channels and stuff.
Yeah. And I guess
Um,
to Jim's question, I mean, if I'm creating a new one, it's not giving me a naming option there, but after the fact, I guess it's just a rename. I could rename it after the fact, I guess. Awesome.
yeah.
Well, we certainly appreciate everybody jumping on today. Hope this was helpful, and we will see you next week and continue to discuss. If you've got some things you feel like you want future sessions to talk about, hit us up and let us know, and we'll try to incorporate that in.
Yeah. Thanks for joining, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Have a good day and weekend.
See you next time. Bye, guys.